write a blog. So one of the things that I did when I started training was, since I had such a big goal, I didn't want to forget the transformation that would happen along the way. So I started writing about it. And I kept it to myself as a journal, but I had some friends that I would talk to, and they said, "Man, you need to make this public." And I was scared to do that because I was vulnerable, it could be embarrassing. But then I realized if I'm afraid, that's like a signal. That's the direction I need to go so that fear doesn't rule my life and make my decisions for me. I make my decisions. So I decided to make it public.
Created live on Fireside.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z, and today my special guest is Chris Tubbs. Thank you for joining me today. How are you doing today?
Hey there, Coach Ray. I'm really excited to talk to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, likewise. We actually met on Clubhouse back in the day when had a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
And then from there, started following you on Instagram, and I'm always watching different people, and I love following people who are into fitness, especially have a passion for it. I could even tell just on the way you write about your workouts. And to me, it's even more interesting because a lot of people, they're just about the big competition, the event, but they don't really enjoy the training, and you love the training part.
Yeah, I do.
And for me in the beginning, it was a love-hate. I love the whole competition. That's what got me more involved. And then I learned to love the actual training, the whole getting ready for it, maybe more now than the actual competition. And I've listened to you on a couple of podcasts as well. And I'm like, oh, it's time to bring you on. And
Oh, wow.
and then as I'm listening to the podcast, I learned even more about you. And I was like, wow, because I know I remember hearing you speak back in the day. And I followed certain people at the time. You could hop in and listen to runners or martial artists.
That was on the with the Kings, the Dominique and her husband run show on I forgot the name of the platform you just said. Yeah, I remember that.
I always like to get started with when you were younger. When you were younger, were you active? Were your parents pushy about working out, or did they even encourage you to play any sports or anything like that?
Oh, I played outside. I grew up in Chicago, mostly between Chicago and Los Angeles, but I spent most of my time in Chicago and up through high school. And I was just out running the street with my boys, and that was the activity. We might have had bicycles, but mostly just running around the city. My dad didn't push me to play any particular sport. I swam. I joined a swim club and did some bowling. I joined a bowling club at one point. No, I had forgotten all about that. But I swam mostly for a few years and became competitive at that and went into high school as a competitive swimmer. I was never any good at basketball. I tried playing street ball with the guys, but I didn't have the skills. And football, I was a big guy. I was strong as a kid. My father played professional football, and he would only allow me to play until I got to high school. And then he said, "You're done, because I'm not going to let you do to your body what I did to mine. You have to find something else." And so I think that's where swimming came in for me, is because I liked football. We used to sit and watch the games, and my friends would play, and it was a nice aggressive sport. I really enjoyed it, but he limited me in how much I could play. So I did that, and then I stopped when I finished high school. I just basically stopped sports altogether and had a big gap until I started my health journey late in my 40s.
Oh, okay. So in between that whole time, I know you went to school, you got a PhD. So that whole time you weren't very active?
No. In college, I wasn't active. In graduate school, I tried lifting weights a little bit, but I never really I didn't find it enjoyable. So I was never consistent. And I just had the idea of becoming this big muscular guy. And then when I realized how much work is required to get there, I was like, nah, that's not for me. I don't want it that badly. The motivation was wrong. And so I would spend a lot of time in the lab. My PhD is in biochemistry. So I was a bench scientist. So I spent a lot of time in the lab, and I needed an outlet, just activity from being inside of a building in the laboratory. So I would go to the pool or play racquetball with other graduate students just for relaxation, but nothing really serious or competitive for long term.
Do you feel that that's in part because you were so busy studying to get your PhD, or Were you also just living the whole college lifestyle and, enjoying it?
Yeah, it wasn't important to me. I felt healthy enough, and I was just running around with friends, and it wasn't a priority at all. In college, I was fine, and getting the PhD took a lot of time. I was working 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, so I could fit it in an hour here or there, but I didn't do much of it. It wasn't a priority. And then afterwards, after I finished my graduate work, I went to work, and I just fell into the routine of the kind of the corporate life where you work normal hours, and then afterwards you go to happy hour, and then you go home, sit down, and it was just I fit the average mold, and didn't realize how much I had I was falling into the trap. I would call it a trap. I'm trying to move out of the sun here, um, and I did that for quite a while, and even though I had relatives that were getting sick or getting older or their health was failing, I thought because I didn't have any of the chronic diseases, I was healthy enough. So I didn't find it important to exercise regularly. It was I just didn't really take it seriously.
And the picture that I have in the background of you, it looks like at some point you got put on some good amount of weight. At
I
any
did.
point while you were going through your graduation and just as time passes, at any point did you say, "Hey, I need to start getting in shape," and then decide or give yourself an excuse not to, or anything like that?
Um, in my mind, I was fit. It was kind of
Okay.
like watching the grass grow. So that picture that you have was around. I was probably 47 or 46 when I took that picture, and I had been that weight for a while, but I didn't really see it. I was kind of in denial because I felt like I was fit enough. I just didn't pay attention. It's a sad state when I look when I look back at it. And what really woke me up was one Christmas. I was going to take my son to the Nutcracker, and we got dressed up. He loved wearing three-piece suits, and so I put on my dress clothes, and the buttons were stretching. And I looked at the picture, and my face was fat, and I saw my body like that. And I felt horrible, but also he made a remark and said, "Man, Dad, you look pregnant." And that just broke me. I said, "Oh man, I got to look at myself for what's really happening here." Because your kids tell you the truth. They have no reason to filter and worry about your feelings, especially when they're young. 8, 9 years old. They just say what they see. So it was denial where I didn't really want to see the truth. I created stories for myself of where I was, and just compared myself to people that were in worse shape than I was to justify not doing anything more than I was doing.
And so at that point, when your son made that comment, is that what started your whole fitness journey?
Yep. He made the comment, and I saw the picture. They happened right around the same time. And I saw the picture, and it was just a moment in time where I saw my father. My father, like I said, was a football player. He was a big guy, but he had some things going on in his life where he got very out of shape and had some chronic diseases and suffered quite a bit until he passed. And when I saw that picture, I saw myself following that same path. And I remember the pain of experiencing my father as his body deteriorated and his spirit went down as he was suffering from these diseases, and didn't want to do that to my son. I didn't want that cycle to continue with me. It really wasn't a cycle, it was just him to me, but I didn't want to create a cycle and pass it on to him and make him feel that. So I decided in that moment that I was going to change directions and find a way to be healthy.
And after all that time of inactivity, where did you want to begin? Did you have any interests besides, the
Yeah.
sports that you would watch on TV?
So I had seen an ad for there's a fitness club called Lifetime Fitness here in Texas. And I think they're in other states around the country, but they have an ad, or at the time they had an ad for an indoor super sprint triathlon. And I remember watching the ad, going, "Oh, that's easy. I can do that. I can swim. I know how to ride a bike, and who can't run?" So I just signed up for it, and it was an indoor swim that was maybe 300 or 400 yards, and the bike was on the stationary trainers, and then the run was probably, I don't know, 2 miles or something on the treadmill. And I went in. I didn't train at all for the run. Again, I was in denial, so I didn't train. I just thought, I can do that, and I got in the swim, and maybe after 2 laps, I felt like my lungs had collapsed. I mean, I couldn't breathe, and in my mind, I was still a swimmer. My mind was this fit guy that remembered what it was like to be able to swim a mile, no problem, and compete. But my body had gone in a different direction, and I was I was in denial, man. So I did that, and it humbled me. And then being hard headed, I said, that was a fluke. So I signed up for another race. Same thing happened again. I crumbled and came in last or next to last.
Okay.
And
Did
then
you do any training in between that point, or you
no,
just went
no, no
straight
training.
competing?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm lying to myself saying it was something else. It's not me. It's something else that's
Right.
the problem. That's how deep the denial went, and not having accountability, not taking ownership of who I am and the choices I've made and those consequences from that. So I did it, fell on my face, but I wasn't finished. I wanted to do this in a particular way. I wanted to be able to run the race. So I was like, well, I need to start from the beginning. So I decided I'd hire a coach, I'd learn how to eat, and I'd create some new habits. I just had to start from the beginning and start all over. That's what I did in January of 2019. And
And
everything changed.
did your habits all come at once, or did you go little by little? Because I know sometimes we'll start working out and
Yeah.
you start seeing
Yeah.
results and you're like, well, I wonder what would happen if I got my nutrition on point, or I wonder if I added some strength and conditioning, or did you just kind of go hard on everything at the same time?
No, I didn't go hard. I knew that I'd have to learn things in pieces because I would get overwhelmed and just stop. So I got the coach, and at the time, I said, I'm feeling bad. I'm not happy. I feel physically, out of shape, and that affected me emotionally. So I needed some kind of goal that would cause me to. It had to be a big enough goal to cause me to focus everything. And at the time, triathlons have different distances, and the shortest one typically is called the sprint. Then there's the Olympic distance, which is the same distance that they have in the Olympics. And then it goes into endurance triathlons. And generally they're IronMan branded, where it's a half Ironman to 70.3 miles, and then the full. I wasn't really aware of Ironman at the time, so I knew of sprint distances and the Olympic. And because I had had so much trouble with the sprint distance, I set the goal in January. I decided October, my big ludicrous goal would be able to finish an Olympic triathlon. So I gave myself, it'd be about 9 months to finish that. And I hired a coach, asked him if he could get me ready. And he asked, what I could do. And I said, I can't do anything. I can swim, but he did an analysis of me swimming. He's like, well, you can't really swim either. I had no run form. My swimming had just gone to pot, and I was out of shape. And so when he started giving me workouts, they were short, but I couldn't even run 2 miles without stopping. Maybe a mile, and my pace was like 15 minutes a mile, and it still was excruciatingly difficult to make it. I couldn't make it 2 miles, even at a 15-mile pace. So we just talked, and he said, you're just going to take it step by step. He explained to me how the process works of building an aerobic base. And then he said, you got to learn to eat. But I didn't take him seriously. So this is to answer your question. We started with just basic running, swimming, and biking, short distances, and building some aerobic fitness. And he kept telling me I wasn't fueling properly. And I didn't listen to him because I was like, I'm eating. So what are you talking about? I'm eating. I'm not hungry. But I didn't understand fueling for nutrition and for performance. I just thought I'm eating enough calories, so I'm good. But my eating habits were poor. And after about, 3 or 4 months, he kind of sat me down. He did regular performance tests. He would write a program, and after about 6 to 8 weeks, I'd go back in and evaluate my progress. And he would, you progress or you don't, and you change the program. And he kept saying, "You're not progressing. And as I watch you, you're running out of energy way too soon. You're not eating. And he would tell me, and it just didn't register. So there came a point after about 6 months, he was like, look, man, if you're not going to do this, then we don't need to be doing this. Either you find somebody to teach you how to eat, or we need to figure something else out. And so I hired a dietitian. I just said, all right, I'll do that. I really want to get to this goal. So I hired a dietitian. And I also subscribed to a program through work where they, one of those health benefits where it was a nutrition, just a basic nutrition. And one of the little things that opened my eyes to how much I didn't know was when they started talking about the difference between hunger and satiety, being, satiated. And that if you eat too fast, the signals in your brain for hunger are not the same signals as when you're satisfied, when your body is satisfied. And they're both in your brain, but they occur at different times. And so when you eat too fast, when you're hungry, you miss the signs for being satisfied and you overeat. And then the signals for thirst sometimes are misconstrued for hunger. And as I began to listen to that, I tried it and realized a lot of what I was doing was eating when I was thirsty because I wasn't drinking very much. So I started learning. And I like you said, I like the process of training. So this opened my world to how much I didn't know. And I started just trying these little things, and they would show up as I exercised, or when I did a session with the coach, there was a difference in my performance. So I would get excited. You're a coach, so you kind of see when your athletes get something new and they finally listen, and it's like the light bulb goes and they go, oh, it's a wonderful feeling.
Did you lose any sort of motivation in between that time when you said you didn't progress really, and
Yeah.
you went back and you guys reevaluated, made some changes, and he reinforced the same thing about nutrition? At that point, did you feel like, well, I got a coach and I'm not seeing results or feeling results? Did you feel
Yeah,
like that at all?
I was getting frustrated, particularly on the run. When I was running, I wasn't making the progress that I wanted. So I had in my mind, I had an arbitrary pace that I wanted to keep, and I thought I should be able to do. Don't know where it came from, other than watching other athletes that are runners, and so I wasn't getting there fast enough. So I was really getting frustrated and demotivated. And again, not taking accountability, I started thinking, well, maybe I got the wrong coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. But I was talking to some other athletes, and they started telling me things that he was telling me at the same
Mm.
time, So I was like, okay, it's me. Once again, it's me. Learning to become, accountable for my decisions. And I just stuck with it. I, I got demotivated on the run, but I loved how I felt after I exercised. So that really was like a hook in me. And I wanted that feeling. When I finished a tough set, or I ran farther than I had ever run before, I just felt on fire. I felt alive. And that feeling was addictive, especially when I remember the life where I was sitting on the couch and, there's nothing motivating me. I'm watching TV and I'm eating potato chips, just having to unbuckle my belt. Or actually, there was a point where I was screwing new, I got the drill and I put holes in my belt because the belt had become too small. Didn't flag anything for me. I just thought, oh, I'm really creative. I don't have to go buy a new belt. I'll just put a hole in the belt. It's, the extent we go to deny things in my mind is just amazing.
It is. And I love your honesty about it. I think this podcast will help a lot of people who are maybe in denial as well and don't realize it. I know for
Yeah.
myself, I just kept thinking, oh, I can do it. I can do, and didn't want to listen to the
Keep falling.
coaches, didn't
Yeah.
want to follow the advice, being hard headed, thinking I know
Mm-hmm.
it all. And at some point you realize, what if I listened? And then when you
Yep.
listen a little bit, you see a result and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, it was me.
Right. And I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. I was making progress, but I had created these arbitrary goals that were way ahead of what my capabilities were, that I set myself up for disappointment from the beginning, rather than just trusting in the plan, which is something, we say all the time, just trust in the plan. You'll get there, especially if you have a coach, right? That's why you hire somebody with experience to take you where you want to go, because you don't know how to do it yourself very effectively most of the time. So yeah, I loved the process of the transformation. and beginning to see what I could do. And still, at the time, the Olympic distance triathlon was a ludicrous goal for me. Was a big goal for me. And then I had a friend. So I had a buddy that I worked with that did Ironman triathlon. So once I learned he was doing them, I would talk to him to get information or advice about how to train and what I was doing and share with him. And he then started getting in my head saying, man, I'm going to be down in Texas next year. Why don't you do the Ironman Texas with me? And I was at a point still pretty early where I wasn't racing 5Ks. I wasn't riding my bike more than 20 miles. So an Ironman distance for folks that are unaware, the swim is 2.4 miles. And then you get on a bike and ride for 110 miles. And then you get off and you finish the race by running a marathon. So it's completely different than, these smaller races that I thought was ludicrous. So really, I told him to go to hell. I said, man, just go to hell, get out of here. But he didn't give up. He just said, don't worry about it. And he just kept pushing my buttons, pushing my buttons. And after about 3 weeks, something in my ego flipped. I said, yeah, let's do it. I don't know how you're going to do it. So I talked to my wife. I said, I've been talking to Tim, and he's suggested I do this Ironman with him. And I talked to Johnny, which is my coach's name. And I asked Johnny, I said, man, you think I can do Ironman in a year? He says, I'll get you ready if you want it. And I didn't understand what that "if you want it" phrase meant. But I said, all right, let's do it. So I agreed to do it, not knowing what I was really getting myself into. My ego just said, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I went after it. And I loved it. It was so hard, but I loved it.
And you mentioned talking to your wife about it. And I think that's really important when you're with someone else, because if people don't know it, it consumes a lot of your time as far as training. And so she was supportive from the beginning, or did she tell you,
yes,
you're okay? That's great.
Yeah, she was supportive. Actually, her response was, she just looked at me and she says, I didn't know how long it was going to take, but I knew this was coming. She says, I know you, and I knew an Olympic was not going to be enough for you, that the Ironman was going to be what you want. I just didn't know how quickly it was going to happen. And so she used to run triathlons, so she knew what the training was and what the commitment would be. But she also saw how happy it made me. And I think I was a happier person at home and more fun to be around as I was training, and feeling good about myself. I brought a level of energy and joy into the house and into the relationship. And I was setting an example for our son as well. So she absolutely supported me. And I was at the point where I just had a lot of energy. When I was sitting around the house, she was like, you need to get out of here. You're just bouncing around, messing, aggravating me and getting in our way. Go do something outside. So I think she wanted me out of the house too. It makes us happier when I get my energy out training rather than buzzing around like a gnat around the house.
So now you got your goal set, which is the Ironman Texas, and you're giving yourself 1 year to prepare for it.
Yes.
How'd the training go, and did you get to do the Ironman?
Yeah, so that was spring of 2019 when I set the goal. The race was going to be in the April of 2020. So I was training and traveling. So I traveled for work, and it was difficult to get all the workouts in while I trained, but I'm glad that it was difficult because it helped me establish the discipline. One of the mistakes that I made early on was thinking that I had to be motivated every day. And if I wasn't motivated, something was wrong with me. And through being forced to have discipline on the road, being tired or making sure I found time, I realized that the discipline is what gets you into a consistent routine. The motivation is merely an emotion. It's just like happiness and sadness and joy, and it comes and it goes. So if you rely on an emotion, you'll be betrayed and you'll be inconsistent. I found that it's the discipline, it's the conscious choices that we make every day that get us to where we want to be, that get us to our goal. And motivation, when you feel it, it's just like icing. It makes it dynamite. It's awesome, but it goes away. And you know that it goes away, and then it comes back, and you love it when it comes back, but you don't rely on it. to keep going. And so that difficulty in traveling was a gift for me. So I was consistent, and I loved it. And I found a group. Also, the other thing that I did was I found a group of triathletes locally to train with, so that I could learn from my peers, not just the coach. Because I mean, you see the coach from time to time, but I wanted to be with people who were training daily and see how they do the actual execution every day. How do you think about biking and setting a schedule? When do you eat? What do you eat? How do you eat? How do you mix it? How much do you carry? That all those little things. You just don't know until you do it, or you have to figure out how to do it. So I figured if I can do it with people who have experience, that'll help me. My training and my goal. So the training got nice and heavy, and I found some folks that had done it and were willing to train with me and help build me up. Build the bike was the biggest thing for me. Really, in the race, you want to get the bike done in time so that you can run the marathon. But if I wanted to have enough time so that I could kind of shuffle if I had to. I not really I wasn't a marathoner. I had never run a marathon before, so I did train it up, and I was ready to go. But then COVID, of course, came, and they put in February or so of 2020. So they postponed the race indefinitely, and I was really hyped in February, April to do the race, and I didn't know that they were going to cancel them, for a year and a half or so. So when they postponed the one in Texas in April, I decided I was going to find the next race that was still on schedule and sign up for it. And that was 9 months, or it was in November. So that's about 7 months later, which was in Florida. It was a flat course. So I wanted something that was a similar type course. I live in Houston, so everything's flat. I didn't want to go to Colorado and do a race kind of thing. So I signed up for Florida, and then I signed up for a half Ironman. So one of the things I did was I decided I was just going to do an Ironman. I never even considered doing a half Ironman first. And once it got postponed, some of the buddies here said, well, why don't you just do a half Ironman? There's one in another city in Texas that we like doing, so come on, do that. So I signed up for it. And so I kept training, and they canceled that race. But I never lost the motivation to train. It became, the race became kind of like a waypoint. I just didn't want to train for the race and that'd be it, the goal. I wanted to train because I liked how my body was transforming, how my mind was transforming. And I was beginning to understand that I could do so much more than I even imagined. And it began translating to things outside of sport. I began to see possibilities in my life and consider things that I hadn't before, simply because I was learning and doing things that I had never considered athletically. And I began to think, well, why can't this apply to everything? If that makes sense. It spread. And it just transformed so much that I just wanted to keep doing it. I didn't even care so much about the races. The races were just waypoints to check where my fitness and my mindset was on the journey to just keep going and improving, finding new ways to pull something out of myself.
That's a great perspective, especially because for so many people, as we were talking, it's all about the event. So you have one race canceled, then you sign up for another one, a half one. That one gets canceled as well?
It did. It got canceled. And I actually, when it got canceled, I don't know, a week before the race or something, very close. I was pumped. I was trained and tapered for that race. I just decided I'm going to do it on my own. So I went into my trainer's facility and did a half Ironman by myself on the stationary bike. And then he had a swim erg, which is a mechanical swim machine. So I did that. And then I got on the mechanical bike and rode 56 miles. Then I got off and I ran on the treadmill for a half marathon just to do it, because I had trained up for it and I wanted to see what it would feel like and how I would do. So I was really happy. I mean, I was pumped.
And how was the feeling once you accomplished that afterwards? And were you sore at all?
I was really tired, and I was a little disappointed because it didn't feel like I thought it would feel. But in retrospect, it wouldn't. You don't have the crowd. You're not outside. Right. There's no more. The other athletes aren't on the course to, you feed off each other when you're you feed off the athletes, but also the crowd gives you energy when you're racing. And so none of that was there. But I didn't know that. I hadn't raced yet. So I was happy that I did it. I felt accomplished, but I didn't feel the like, yeah, badass kind of thing. And that was disappointing. That's what I was expecting. But that didn't come until after the real race. Then that's when I felt it.
Did that make you even kind of nervous to go into the Ironman without having a chance to even do half? A lot of people use like halves to prepare
Yeah.
as a well, this was getting me ready and it kind of helps me go a little bit faster pace.
Um, no, it didn't. Surprisingly, because initially my goal was just to do the Ironman. So thinking about it again in a real life perspective, when I finished college, the path generally people go to get PhDs, they'll do a master's degree first and then they'll get a PhD. They'll do college, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. When I finished college, I wanted a PhD, so I never considered think of the master's as the halfway point. I never considered. I just went straight to a PhD program and never thought about half because my goal was a PhD. So why would I waste my time on the stuff in the middle? I took the same approach with Ironman. My goal was the full Ironman. I didn't. It may have been a little bit arrogant to think it's not worth my time to do a half Ironman because there's plenty to learn by doing them along the way. And I wouldn't suggest anybody just skip it. There's a lot to learn along the way, and racing a half Ironman will teach any athlete a lot and help you prepare for a full distance Ironman. Any race teaches you, but that teaches you for an even longer distance. So doing it again, I would have done the half distance first because I think it's more educational. It can be done the way I did it, but I think education wise and experience wise, it's more beneficial to do that. Also at that time, that was around that was leading between the two. So I just was happy training. I didn't feel nervous about doing the full because I was building up my stamina. I didn't expect much on the run because I still didn't have any run form. I had focused on developing some swim technique for distance open water swimming and learning to ride a triathlon bike. I bought a triathlon bike earlier in the year, and so I was learning to ride it and be on the road. And the run was kind of just secondary to me. I just wasn't ready to take that on.
I want to do an Ironman one day. The thing
Yeah,
holding me back is one, I can't really swim. And the second thing is I don't see my butt being on a bike for that long. I see
yeah,
myself putting a giant pillow on there and just
yeah.
sitting on it because that seems like just a long time.
It is a long time. I mean, it generally takes me 6 to 6.5 hours to do it. The faster folks do it in 4.5 to 5.5 hours. But I mean, you spend a lot of time. What happens is you just develop. We call it a butt callus. From sitting in that seat all that time. And then the other important thing that you do is you go through seats because seats have different shapes and they fit your body, and you get fitted for the bike because your position on the bike, being in an aero position, being like this is very closed off in your hips. And I've heard you talk about having tight hips, sitting down a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It affects your running, but being in that position and then having your elbows on bars and your neck up can take a toll on your body. So you want to go and get fitted so that biomechanically you're in the most optimal position. And that also includes how you sit on the seat. So there are devices that go on your seat. It's like a mat. And when you sit on it, it shows where your weight is distributed. If you're heavy in the back, if you lean more to your right or to your left. And from that, you can kind of narrow down the types of seats or which saddles would be best fit for your body, your pelvis shape,
Mm-hmm.
and how you sit on the bike to make it more comfortable or less uncomfortable, if you will. And then as you ride more and more, it doesn't hurt so much. But by the time you get to 5, 6 hours, you're ready to get off that seat. That's just how it is. You're
Yeah, I
ready to
could
get up.
imagine. I
You're
could
ready to get
imagine.
up. Yeah. So I think you could do it. You just build up to it like anything else. You start with 15, 20 miles and build it up and go for longer periods of time, and your body will adapt to it and you'll get used to it. Your mind and your body adapt. The big chunk of that is just mental. Being that way for so long, doing that for so long is a mental battle.
So to me, the first time I finished the marathon, it clicked in my head. I was like, I was able to accomplish something didn't think I could do. And
Yeah.
actually had doubt if I could finish it. After finishing your Ironman, what what possibilities did you think of? Did you think of something right away? I'm gonna do something else next, or how
I
did you feel
did.
completing your Ironman?
That Ironman was super special for me for a couple of reasons. One, it was an Ironman, and I completed it. But also, as you said in the title, I had prostate cancer. So I was diagnosed with prostate cancer about a month before the race,
Oh,
and
okay.
I had scheduled surgery 3 weeks after the race. So I didn't know when or if I was going to be able to do another Ironman after I had surgery, depending. I didn't know what results would be, how my body would heal or respond, or that it was an uncertain future. So yeah, that race was really special to me because I realized this might be my time for an indefinite amount of time. I may not be able to get back out here and do this. I don't know. I felt peaceful going into the race. I wasn't nervous at all. It was odd to me. I felt ready because I had done the training, and before the race, I had done the rides, I had done the swims. I didn't run a marathon beforehand through practice, but I was running, 18 miles, 16, 18 miles regularly. So I knew I could do a marathon, even if I had to walk part of it, walk it. And I could do the ride, I could do the swim. So I felt confident that I could complete it in the time frame. So the Ironman has a limit, 17 hours. You have to finish by midnight to have an official time. And I was confident that I could finish it. And I had this looming major health problem that I was about to have to face, just a couple of weeks after the race. So when I walked through, as I was doing the race, I felt happy the whole time. I mean, I remember hearing comments throughout the race, particularly on the run as we're running the marathon and the sun is going down, and we have what we call a zombie walk where it's you've been racing for 12, 15 hours and you just want to get to the finish line. You're trying to run, you're trying to walk, your body is depleted, and your mind is messing with you, telling you, just stop. Why are you doing this? And I'm still smiling. And I remember people that are standing on the side cheering. I remember a woman going, "Oh my God, he's still smiling." I mean, I felt like I was half dead, but I felt so grateful that I was out there and I could still do it. It was the strangest experience. I was in so much pain. I was completely unprepared for the pain I was in during the marathon and the mental anguish, just the physical pain and the mental anguish. But I was still going. I was unprepared. But at the same time, I felt joy that I was out there, that I could be here and I was doing it, no matter how painful it was. It was like a gift. As odd as it sounds, it really was a gift. So I felt very happy. And when I finished, many people describe the red carpet. So Iron Man finishes, there's this red carpet. It's a black carpet. I think it's black with red M's on it, but there's also red signage along the way. And there's all these lights, and the crowd is there, and they're yelling and banging on it, and it really picks you up coming into it. And the magnitude of what you've just done kind of comes crashing down on you when you finish. You don't have to think about going anymore. And all of that emotion crashes on you. And oftentimes you just break down, you cry. This is all the emotions just hit you. And it didn't happen to me then. It happened to me at the beginning of the race when I was standing on the beach in line with all the athletes in the corral. They had like 4 or 5 corrals, and the athletes are going in. So I could see them going off in the water as the sun was rising. And there's these little arms, swimming along. And it hit me that I'm here. I set this goal I called my ludicrous goal. I put in the work day after day. It hurt. I was happy. I sacrificed, and I'm here. I'm not thinking about those athletes. I'm one of them now. I'm here and I'm about to do this. And I felt calm, but I began to cry as I walked to the beach. And it was just happiness, like gratefulness and happiness. And from there, I just went into the race with joy and a feeling of gratitude. So that's a long answer to your to your question of how I felt.
No, I mean, that's okay. It's very detailed, and I know a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing about the emotion. Those events
Yeah.
could be very emotional,
Yes.
especially. Do you feel that since you found out about the prostate cancer right, like what, 2 weeks you said before the race?
About a
A
month before the
month.
race. Yeah.
Do you feel that added to the gratitude, or did it put a strain as well as mentally for the last month getting ready for it?
It added to the gratitude 100%. Because like I said, it was an unknown outcome. I didn't know what to expect. There can be consequences, side effects to going into your abdomen and snipping and cutting and re-putting things together and taking out glands and organs. I didn't know what was going to happen. But what was kind of a gift was that I was prepared for that fight by preparing for the fight of Ironman. The endurance challenge prepared me mentally. It steeled my mind for battle and fighting through, knowing that you just take another step. You just keep going to the next one, and that's how you get there. Just keep going. If you can pick your leg up and go, then take another step, no matter how much it hurts. That prepared me. So those two kind of complemented each other. The prostate cancer made me very grateful and more aware while I was racing the race. I wasn't focused on, man, I can't wait till I finish the bike. When I was riding the bike, I was looking at other people. I was paying attention to how my body felt. I was in the moment while I was racing. And I'm really grateful that I was, because as you know, the journey is really about the journey, not just the end. The race is the finish. Getting to the race is where the magic happens, where the transformation occurs to your mind and your body and your life. And that's what I'm really grateful that I was able to pay attention to along the way.
Why did you get the prostate exam? Was it just you were doing regular blood work, or did something happen that you went to the doctor? Because recently I got bit by a dog on 4th of July, and
Uh-huh.
I went to the doctor, and the doctor's telling me about consider getting prostate, consider getting some blood work. And I'm
Yeah.
like, just kind of keep away from doctors. And I'm not
Yeah.
a big fan of them. And I heard you talk about, the experience, and I think a lot of guys are probably feeling like me, like they don't want to do that. Like it, it, it's just something
Yeah.
that I don't think anybody would enjoy. So what led to that, to you finding
Yeah.
out?
It was simple annual physicals, but like a lot of men, I had skipped years. Like, I feel fine. I'm not going. So I had been maybe 3 years since I had my physical. And then I just happened to go in February. So this was 2020. So right before COVID, I went and got just a regular annual physical, not thinking anything about it. And just to kind of shorten the story, the part of that, because I was turning 50, 2020, I was 49. So she was like, well, you need to do prostate, get PSA for prostate. You're getting to that age. And as a black man, your risk is higher. So we start screening earlier for black men. So I did the blood work, and it came back. She says it's elevated. It's above what the number says is normal. So let's do it again. And so I did it again. She said maybe it was an error, because it's a lot from where it was 3 years ago. It's a lot higher, even though the one higher, looking back on it, was higher than it should have been 3 years prior. So I did it again, and it came back down, and it was just underneath what's considered normal. So, lab values, they give you these ranges, like from 2 to 6 is normal, and then outside of that is when they tell you to pay attention, or the doctor calls you and wants to look further. Well, it fell back into the normal range. And so in my mind, I was like, I'm good. That was just a lab mistake. And I'm so grateful for this physician. She said, no, no, no. You need to go see a specialist, because one was too high, the other one's too low. I don't know how to interpret this. Go see a urologist and let them tell you you're okay or not. So I was like, okay. COVID happened. I couldn't see a urologist until October. I went to see him. He did another test, which was a little bit more sensitive, and it came back that said I had a medium high risk of prostate cancer. So he said, we got to do a biopsy. And so I did. That scared the dickens out of me, to get
Mm-hmm.
a rectal biopsy. But one of his questions was, what took you so long to get in here? Your numbers are way too high. And I was like, what do you mean? Why? He said, why do you take so long to come here? I said, have you heard of COVID? Nobody's open. I can't get in here. He's like, your numbers have been high for years. What are you talking about? I'm like, oh, well, I didn't know. So he said, I said, it's within the norm. He says, no, that doesn't apply to you. That's for Caucasian males. If I can detect something for you at your age, you have a problem. I said, well, I'm here now. That was an education thing that I didn't have. Even my primary care physician, she didn't even know that. The urologist knew that. So this is a reason to go see the physician, because just because you feel good and you don't want to go to the doctor, if you have people around you that care about you, or that you care, or you care for yourself, go and find out, because not knowing doesn't make things any better. It just makes things worse when you do find out, because your body will compensate until it can't compensate anymore, and then shit's really bad, right? So if the cancer has spread outside my prostate, if I had waited, I had the risk of it spreading to other parts of my body. Then I'd be in a whole different position. But fortunately, he did the biopsy. It came back where there were sections of my prostate that were 50% of cancer, the cells. I mean, it had a lot of cancer in it. So I had a lot of cancer in parts of my prostate. And so we went through the options of what to do. And because of my age, I decided I would go with surgery rather than radiation or anything else. And I just decided to go to Baltimore to get the surgery, because that's where the guy that created the procedure that's done now is done robotic. And it's a nerve sparing technique to help preserve impotence and incontinence. Those are the two major side effects with prostate surgery. And that the major side effect before the surgeons got good, any man that had prostate surgery, to save his life, would become impotent and probably incontinent, because they didn't know there were nerves that ran right along the prostate that controlled the erections and the bladder. The sphincter for the bladder is in the prostate, one of them. So when you take that out, you lose control. So I went and I talked to this guy, and I wanted to find the best surgeons that I could. And he said, I've trained two of them in the United States. And I said, well, stop what you're doing and tell me who they are, because that's why I'm here. So he told me about the one in Baltimore. I made an appointment, and it happened to be 3 weeks after the race at IronMan. And I set the appointment. And again, I got lucky because COVID was going on. It had kind of receded a little bit. So we still had the race. We were able to have the race in Florida. And some of the things were opening back up. So when I went to the hospital, they didn't let other people in, but they were doing these surgeries. But just 2 weeks before, they were only allowing emergency surgeries. They had changed it, then they opened it back up again. And I had the surgery, and it's just a couple of hours. It's a short surgery, but it's very painful, because they lay you on a table and your feet are up in the air. Your head is down towards the back so that your organs slide in your chest, because your prostate is down towards your pelvis. And they do their thing. They fill it up with gas. They blow your abdomen up with the gas. They do their thing and then close you up. They don't pull the gas back out. So when you wake up, you have, it's just so painful. It's so painful to walk around with this bloated gut. Your digestive system's not working, and anesthesia, all of that. But the point I'm getting to is Ironman prepared me for this, because I knew that I had to start walking to get my digestive system going again. And it hurt like hell to stand up and walk. And the nurse told me, just have a seat. I said, no, I need to walk. And the surgeon said, you can walk if you want to. So I walked all night long in the hospital. And there was a sign. I've told the story before. When I only stayed there one night. When I first got to the room, this was about 3 hours after surgery. I started walking down the hall. I had my IV pole and my gown on. I'm holding my gown in the back, my butt hanging out. The hallway, I turned the corner, and there was a little handwritten sign on the wall that said 11 laps is 1 mile. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do a 5K today. That was the first thing that came to mind. As much as it hurt, I could barely pick up my feet. I said, I'm going to do a 5K today. And I just walked. It hurt. And the nurse stopped me, and she says, what are you doing? She said, why don't you go sit down? I said, when I sit down, it hurts. When I walk, it hurts. So I'm going to walk. That's the only way I'm going to get better. And she put her hands up, and I just remember the horror on their faces looking at me. I guess because I looked so bad, coming out of anesthesia, and just when you come out of surgery, you don't look good. But I was determined. And that mindset came from training and racing Ironman. So I think I recovered well. And then the last part of the story is the surgeon, actually called me the next morning. No, he called me that evening after I had done the walking and says, "Hey, man, I'm told that you're Superman on the floor. You don't even have to spend the night if you don't want to. You can go home." I said, "No, you're crazy. I just because I'm walking doesn't mean I'm better and I'm okay." He said, "You just cut me up and sewed me inside. I'm going to stay here because if anything goes wrong, I need you to be very close to come fix it. So I'll be here." And he said, "That's your choice." So I stayed, and then after they released me, I just stayed at a hotel locally for 3 days
Just in
just to make
case.
sure nothing,
Hmm.
just in case. I didn't want to get on a plane. I had a catheter, and I didn't want to take any chances. I didn't want to have to come to Houston and then hope somebody could, fix it. I'm gonna go back to the guy that did the surgery. So another long answer. I know I'm taking up your time, but
Oh,
you
no,
ask
no.
questions that are very important to me, and I think it's important to share to folks that men, get your prostate exam. Black men, brown men, even white men, get your prostate exam because you don't feel. I didn't have any signs. I didn't have any symptoms, but the cancer was getting bad. If I waited till I felt bad, I probably would not have survived very long because it would have spread in my bone, my liver, my lungs, and that's very hard to treat. And if you do treat it, you got to go through some pretty harsh treatments, and life gets to be pretty bad, pretty,
Yeah, to
pretty
me,
hard.
it's funny how life works out. I think that everything happens for a reason. And as I was
Yeah,
inviting you as a guest, and I re-listening to your story, and then I heard your whole prostate, and the doctor telling me that he'll go up to the wives of his patients and he'll be, "Where's your husband?" "Oh, no, no, they don't do physicals. They don't come in." And then I looked up how many people are afraid of doctors. It's like 12% of
yeah,
Americans are afraid of doctors, which I'm included in that one.
yeah.
And when you think about 12% out of what, 300, 4 million people, that's a lot of people
It's a lot of
that,
people. It's
that
tens of
refuse to go to
millions.
the doctor. Yeah. And
Yeah,
they need to hear people who've been through it. That way they can go and avoid having to go. I mean, sometimes you hear the story of it's too late if you would have come
yes,
sooner. And that's
yes.
what we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. So go. If you're afraid, that's fine. Fear is a normal a normal feeling, but don't let it stop you from doing what needs to be done.
And how long of a recovery process was it for you to get back to your routine of training?
When I got home, I the next day I got up and started walking outside. And I had a friend who I trained with for the one in Florida, who was still training, and so I just started joining her outside when she on her runs. I couldn't ride the bike and I didn't swim because my wounds were still open, but I could walk. So every day I would walk, and I would just walk a little bit further each day, and every now and then I would try to jog. And what would happen is I would see her jog because what would happen? We'd be at the park, we'd walk, and she'd jog, do her, run, and then she would just turn around and come back and check on me, and then go out. And I got tired of watching her running, so I kept wanting to run, and so I would try it, and my wife would get pissed. And my answer was, I don't know what my limits are until I test them. I quickly found out the first time I did it, I came home and I was pissing blood. I said, "Ooh, I found a limit. I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to slow down a little bit more." So I took my time and I just kept building from there. And that was in November. So November, December, I would walk. I began to jog very slowly. And then once I was healed, I had the catheter for a couple of weeks. And then I took that out and went swimming. Once I got clearance, I knew my abdomen was healed. I started swimming in December, just very slowly, very easily, because everything, scar tissue builds up. So just being in the pool elongating hurt. My stomach was very tight inside. So I had to kind of break up the scar tissue. That was good. And I didn't sit on a bike for until sometime in January, almost February, because the incision, everything was really tender and I was scared. I was really scared. So the first thing I did was I just sat on my bike for 5 minutes to see if I could stay there. And it hurt like hell. So I got off and I would just sit on it for a little while. I didn't.
And while we get Chris's signal back, thank you everybody for joining. Today, my guest is Chris Tubbs. He is a scientist, a biochemist, and we lost him. Let me re-invite him. He's a biochemist, Ironman, triathlete, prostate cancer survivor, father, husband. Try it again. And this is what happens during live shows and internet connections. We were getting close to the end, but we'll see if Chris can make it back on here. You know what I think possibly happened is it happened to me one time. I did a show outside and the phone got really hot and my guest was talking and I was nowhere to be found until my phone could cool off. I know he lives in Texas. I was going to ask him how hot it is in Texas because I know the weather can be pretty hot there. But that's possibly what could have happened. Otherwise, we can see him on here. But it could be that his phone just got too hot. And he has such a fascinating story, and he's very open about the things that he went through, especially with the prostate cancer. And I think a lot of us need to hear it. And it's such a fascinating story that, of course, I wanted to invite him back to give us a part two. And I'm interested in learning more about the whole scene of Ironman and triathlete in Texas. Didn't even know that it was that they actually had an official Ironman in Texas. Most of my friends that have done it go to Arizona, and I wanted to also ask him why he chose Florida versus Arizona, because from what I know, Texas is pretty plain. I've never been to Texas, just to the airport, and I don't really count that. But Arizona, unless you're in the north part, is pretty flat as well. It does have some nice mountains areas, but that's pretty much like Sedona and what is that city along up north going towards the Grand Canyon. A couple in southern Arizona. Looks like we probably lost Chris because of the phone. So I'm going to try one more thing. I'm going to remove him from the stage and then I'm going to invite him back up and see if that works.
Hey,
There you
my
are.
phone, that was the weirdest thing. My
Did your
phone
phone
just
get
cut
too
off.
hot?
I think it did. Yeah, it got too hot. I'm inside now.
Okay. I was just explaining that. I'm like, I think that that's what happened. Only because that's my past experience. Except my phone
Oh,
shut off on my guest, and my guest was good about it. She kept talking and
uh-huh.
talking until I came back. So that was perfect. I was just talking about how you have such a fascinating story, and I definitely want to have you back on because there's so many questions I want to ask you. Like, for example, I didn't know Texas Ironman had an official race there. Most of my friends from California do the Arizona,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then so why you chose Florida versus Arizona, and
Hmm.
then also just like the whole scene and fitness scene in Texas,
Yeah.
and just to get into more details because I heard you on the what was it the Kings podcast. I'm trying to remember
Yeah.
that.
Lean in with the Kings.
Leaning in with the Kings. I got to have them on too. But yeah, you were just so open about the whole prostate cancer and the
Yeah.
experience and some of the things that I didn't even know about the whole impotence thing, which is just
Yeah.
something. It's I don't know if it was better for me to hear that or not hear that.
It's
uh,
scary.
It is scary. So I definitely want to have you back on so we can continue chatting. But I do want to be respectful of your time as well. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with me and my guest and
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah,
listening.
man. I'd love to be back on, and my apologies for not thinking about the overheating while I was outside, to cutting the time short.
Oh, no problem.
Um,
I know you're in Texas. What's the weather like right now today?
it's hot.
Yeah.
It's in the 90s. Let's see, it's 90 degrees, roughly 90 degrees. Yeah, but with humidity, it's probably feeling a little bit hotter. I was out
And
this
I
morning and running, and it was hot at 8 o'clock this morning.
and I do have on the fortune cookie your link here. So if anybody wants to follow your blog, it's a hyperlink. You can just click on it. It'll go
Fortune cookie.
straight.
Oh, cool.
But also, there's people who just listen to the podcast. So if people wanted to follow your story, how could they follow your your
Yeah,
whole story of competing?
sure. So, two ways. I'm pretty active on Instagram. So it's Journey to Ironman Texas is my Instagram handle. And then I write a blog. So one of the things that I did when I started training was, since I had such a big goal, I didn't want to forget the transformation that would happen along the way. So I started writing about it. And I kept it to myself as a journal, but I had some friends that I would talk to, and they said, "Man, you need to make this public." And I was scared to do that because I was vulnerable, it could be embarrassing. But then I realized if I'm afraid, that's like a signal. That's the direction I need to go so that fear doesn't rule my life and make my decisions for me. I make my decisions. So I decided to make it public, and it's journey to 140.com is the blog. And the 140 is the distance of the Ironman race. So journey to 140 miles, basically, Ironman. And even though I've done it, I still train for Ironman. I still have plans, but I love the training and sharing the lessons along the way because they're invaluable.
Oh yeah, I see a lot. You're doing your yoga, so you blog about your
Yeah,
yoga, and then
yeah,
Achilles, which as well is
yeah,
dealing with injuries and the whole recovery process. So I definitely want to have you back on. We'll set it up because we can find out when your next race is, and we could either have you before or after, and then continue where we kind of left off.
yeah. We can chat. I'll email you and give you my cell phone number too. So
Perfect.
it's great talking with you, and I appreciate you doing this. What you're doing is really valuable. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for being here. Thank you everybody also here, Elizabeth, Frankie, EJ, and Chris. Once again, everybody for tuning in to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z, and I'm out. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend.